Hi, thanks for joining me for Exploring Sunday Scriptures on January the 25th, I think it is, and these are the scriptures we hear and worship on January the 30th. This begins a new series, a 4-part series covering a little-known, often skipped book of the Bible, Song of Songs, also known as Song of Solomon. You can find it both ways in different translations of the Bible or by both names. Why is this skipped over? Well, to be quite honest, this is a book of erotic love poetry. It is in the Bible, and so there is that question of why is there this book of very steamy and erotic love poetry in the midst of the Bible? That will be part of what we explore in this series. Why did I choose this? Well, number one, to reveal a little more about this book, but also because February is the month of Valentine's Day. It's the month of lovers. And I figure a great way to kind of heat things up, particularly with how cold they've been, is to explore some of this stuff that we have. So why don't I start by giving you a little bit of background on this book, the Song of Songs, or the Song of Solomon, a general sense of the trajectory of this series that we will be undertaking, and then I will go into reading the actual scriptures for this week with a brief exploration of them. My guess is Exploring Sunday Scripture, so what you're finding here on YouTube is going to be briefer through this series, with this being the longest of all of these in sort of giving a layout of the book itself. I may go back and remind us of some of the things that are the basis of this book, but in future weeks, I won't do as broad of an exploration of what's here. What you find if you open the pages of Song of Songs or Song of Solomon is, as I said, poetry. So what it leaves behind largely in the biblical narrative is tribal conflict and political disputes and war and domestic relations. And what we have here really isolated in some ways from all of that other stuff is incredibly private dialogue and sentiments, interpersonal discourse. What it provides then in some ways is a sense of the non-public world of ancient Israel and a conversation, if you will, between intimates, between lovers, between people. And so what's interesting is nowhere in the 8 chapters of this book do we ever find reference of God even mentioned. How is it in the Bible with no God? Well, this is something we will explore in just a little bit. But no reference to God, even no reference to the covenants, the Davidic covenant or the covenant of Sinai, which makes it very interesting in that regard. We have also, in an incredible, interesting facet of this, that the female voice is the primary voice of this book. It is a discourse between a couple, and in this case, it is a heterosexual discourse, though that is not the point of it, is a focus on that, but rather a discourse between lovers, between a couple. But the primary voice in this book is female, and she, in this role, very different from the way that we see women in the rest of the Bible, is assertive, uninhibited, unabashed about herself and about her desires, particularly her sexual desires. It is patently erotic and might be seen as kind of incredibly secular then, based on what we have here. It revels in the joys of nature and work and play, particularly when one is in love. So you might say how love reframes the experiences of nature, work, and play itself. So it kind of goes against, I wouldn't say violates as much as just a counter to traditional teachings concerning womanhood and modesty. So womanhood, particularly thinking about traditional gender roles, but modesty is more of a general way of approaching that. What else can I share? It clearly seems to come out of a privileged class scenario, and that's based on the imagery that's here, that this definitely appears like an aristocratic or a privileged class scenario. The book, as far as its content or format goes, is really a collection of love lyrics, of poetry, filled with candid longing and tender expressions of desire and desperation, both by the lover, the primary voice, which is female, and her beloved, which is the other voice. In this case, it's male, but really between this couple, a primary voice, and then the receiver of that, as well as the one that shares that back. So we have passionate dialogues, erotic soliloquies, private dreams. What really is here is an expression of balance and mutuality in the life of this couple. And it highlights the universal plight of couples who are in love and who want to be loved and in relationships of their own choosing. There is, interestingly, certainly some challenge to body image that we have highlighted by the primary voice. So a challenge in the sense of what is perceived of beauty around her, and very specifics regarding her body in that case. So that includes what can be seen as skin color in this, but in response, how her lover, the person who loves her, is themselves in love with all of the aspects of her. So even the things in her own eyes that she sees as liabilities in body image, her lover does not see, and vice versa. In this regard, we find in this poetry, and as I said, it's very erotic, very steamy, that they explore and highlight aspects of each other's bodies, including taste, touch, smell, and sound. It's all there in this stuff. So there has been explorations that this really could be seen in a way of an expression of God's love for God's people. So Israel, in ancient Israel, from a Jewish point of view, or from a Christian perspective, Christ's love for the church, or for each individual salvation or soul. That may or may not be going beyond what we can find here. It certainly is an expression of a couple's love for one another. It's a poem, an expression of human love and the lover's humanity, not their gender. And that's what's the important part here. Well, why might that be important? It could be a way to see how this represents sort of the Edenic ideal, when there is mutuality, when there is balance, and when there is love for one another. That's also where the experience of God present comes to reside. If God's primary feature and aspect to us is love, then in our love for one another, then God too also is experienced and present. So perhaps that is being a highlight. Now, my structure for this series is kind of following the book chronologically, though I'm picking and choosing among scriptures to try to highlight different themes. What I see unfolding in the book is the unfolding of a relationship from its initial stage into a more formal connection, into a maturing and ultimately old age scenario. So in that regard, what I see may differ from what some other scholars see, but I see the dynamic progression of a relationship over time. And so part of what I will highlight is the development of that relationship, even in amidst the challenge of aging in a relationship, and also how that can come to reflect and echo our shift and our growth in our relationship with God and in our journey of faith. So in that regard, when we're thinking of this very first week of this series, we're going to think of the very first impressions that we have when we experience love. And that really is in those initial moments of lust and attraction, when our heart skips a beat, when we can think of nothing else, when we long for and pine for and hunger for an individual, just to be in their orbit, let alone to revel in the experience of them based on their beauty and all of the things that we treasure about them. I'm going to read you actually 3 translations, and that's just to give a little perspective based on translation of a different way of hearing this. It's a series of verses, so if you're looking this up for yourself, I encourage you to read it more fully. And some translations do have a demarcation between the passages of she and him, to show you that change in voice and perspective that's going on. I'm dancing around a little bit. This is all from the first chapter of this 8-chapter book, Song of Songs or Song of Solomon. While, one more thing, the author, while it's attributed to Solomon, scholars find this highly problematic because the primary voice is female. So the author in some ways is unknown, but attributing it to Solomon gives it credibility and weight. And so that's often why we see it in that way. So this is all coming from the first chapter. We have verses 2 through 4a, just the very beginning part of that fourth verse, then verses 9 through 11, and then verses 15 through 16. So I do this sort of in 2 paragraphs, one being the first voice, which is the primary voice. In this case, it is the female voice, and then the response. First from the New Revised Standard Version. Let him kiss me with the kisses of his mouth. For your love is better than wine, your anointing oils are fragrant, your name is perfume poured out. Therefore the maidens love you. Draw me after you. Let us make haste. I compare you, my love, to a mare among Pharaoh's chariots. Your cheeks are comely with ornaments, your neck with strings of jewels. We will make you ornaments of gold studded with silver. Ah, you are beautiful, my love. Ah, you are beautiful. Your eyes are doves. Ah, you are beautiful, my beloved. Truly lovely. All right, here is the Message variant, which always is a little more close to kind of, rather than being a word-for-word translation, trying to get across the general meaning that's here. So it tends to be a little more contemporary in its language. Kiss me full on the mouth, yes, for your love is better than wine, headier than your aromatic oils. The syllables of your name murmur like a meadow brook. No wonder everyone loves to say your name. Take me away with you. Let's run off together. You remind me of Pharaoh's well-groomed and satiny mares. Pendant earrings line the elegance of your cheeks. Strands of jewels illumine the curve of your throat. I'm making jewelry for you, gold and silver jewelry that will mark and accent your beauty. Oh, my dear friend, you're so beautiful, and your eyes so beautiful like doves. And you, my dear lover, you're so beautiful. And the final version from the New International Version. Let him kiss me with the kisses of his mouth. For your love is more delightful than wine. Pleasing is the fragrance of your perfumes. Your name is like perfume poured out. No wonder the young women love you. Take me away with you. Let us hurry. I like you, my darling. I liken you, my darling, to a mare among Pharaoh's chariot horses. Your cheeks are beautiful with earrings, your neck with strings of jewels. We will make you earrings of gold studded with silver. How beautiful you are, my darling. Oh, how beautiful. Your eyes are doves. How handsome you are, my beloved. So you get the sense of this initial attraction. As I said, I see in the book a trajectory of maturing love. Well, this is that initial skipping of the heart, wanting nothing more than to be in the embrace, in the orbit of the other. So we have first, in this case, in this back and forth between these individuals, it's a woman and a man, and so that's the gendered language that's here. That's not the important facet of here. But we have the first speaker in this being the woman, so asserting herself, if you will, in this. Kiss me full on the mouth. I mean, we're talking about a lust being expressed, an extraction, and then a comparison, how the love, so the affection of the other is better than anything else that can be imagined. So things here are very specific to that time period and may sound a little odd to us by comparison. But first, she compares the love being better than wine or any fragrant oils. So again, kind of contacting all of the senses, taste and smell that's there. and then the name. So the name of the person themselves being like a song is just such a beautiful thing. There's nothing more than wanting to say that name over and over, to write that name over and over again. And in a sense that this is one of the many reasons why so many others are attracted to the person. So we have, no wonder everyone loves to say your name is one translation, or the others are, therefore maidens love you, or no wonder the young women love you. So all of those hinting at the delight, the beauty, what you find there, just even the name. And so then the appeal. Come on, let's go. Let's run off together. It's almost like eloping that we have is suggested here, but not in a way that is suggesting that what they are doing is against or counter to what would be appropriate, but really just let's not wait any longer. Let's be with each other. Then we have the answer to that, or the reply, and that's after this has been said, likewise a comparison being made to the first speaker of things that the clumsy male response, or this other speaker, is comparing to. This is particularly when we get into cultural things that we might find really funny, but the comparison to, one of the Pharaoh's best horses. Who would want to be compared to a horse? But they were well maintained and just express such beauty and stamina. And so that's partly what's trying to be expressed to this is that. And then we have particular assets that are highlighted. The cheeks, your neck, and it's not so much how they are bejeweled, but that they are like jewels themselves. So the person's cheek, aptly cheeks being like ornaments perched on the face, and the neck being like strings of jewels itself. The neck has its own beauty but that then things that adorn the cheeks and the neck will only continue to highlight that beauty. And that's what this speaker says, let me ornament this. So let me shower you with gifts that are appropriate to the beauty that you bring and the love that I have. And then one final thing, your eyes are doves. So we have two sort of clumsy things, if we will, particularly in contemporary language, a comparison to one of Pharaoh's horses, and then eyes like a dove. So the first speaker seems to be far more poetic to some degree, but this again is culturally specific and time sensitive, and so we may not understand it as well, but this was very, very nice things being said here. So again, we have a desire to shower with beauty, and finally this reference to the eyes. And the final thing here is a repetition. You are beautiful, my love. Ah, you are beautiful. Your eyes like doves. And there is a final response here. So that's a response of the first speaker, the one that concluded with, let us run away from here. And that's, you are beautiful as well. So an exchange is going back and forth, a mutuality. So attraction and lust, that's what we are beginning with in our four-part series on the steamy, hot love poetry of the Old Testament, of the Hebrew Bible, the Song of Songs, the Song of Solomon. This is just a very brief touching upon this. I spent far more of this exploring the origins and nature of the book itself than the particular passages that we have heard. And in the coming weeks, I'll spend much more time on the specific passages that we are hearing and only touching back to some of the key points about the overall scope and nature of the book itself. So I look forward to making us all blush a little as we explore this erotic love poetry of the Bible together through the very end of January here and into the month of February, hopefully heating things up a little bit around us as everything is so very cold and chilly right now. Thanks as always for joining me for Exploring Sunday Scriptures, and I look forward to seeing you on Sunday as we begin this series together, and next week as we explore the next part of this series. God bless.